This is a podcast or something like that. That is a podcast or something. Wait, no, I would have to do it in the opposite melody. That is a podcast or something like this. Sort of. What's up? Welcome to 74th episode, the 74th episode. Pardon my lack of a participle there. But welcome. It's episode 74. I am recording this here on Sunday. It's a classic Sunday episode. And, it might be a short one. We don't have a lot to cover. It's been a pretty normal week. You know what I mean? Like nothing's really happened. We got some stuff. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely stuff here on the agenda. I'm just, saying coming into the office this morning, I was like, I looked at the doc that they had prepared for me. I was like, So we'll just kind of keep that energy going right now. And I'm drinking a ruby red grapefruit polar premium seltzer. Naturally calorie free. And that is, instead of coffee, they're trying to get me to stop drinking coffee here when I'm recording these episodes. So they got me these seltzers. And I'm like, okay, I don't know why that's so much better. But, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm just trying my best here. They could give me whatever they want to give me. So it's been a great week for the YouTube channel. There, I'm supposed to be talking more about the YouTube channel, the What's Therapy channel. I'm trying to use some of the channel's clout here on the podcast. Sometimes we'll ask What's Therapy to repost, some of our posts, and he does it. And I'm talking about myself. I do it. Because I figure, why not throw him a bone? But, apparently, things going well at the channel. Obviously, people still watch the videos, even though I don't upload any new ones, which is kind of cool. I've thought about this before. If people stopped watching all the videos, I would probably make one quicker. You know what I mean? Because the fact that I'm still getting views is almost like a disincentive. Don't tell YouTube, because I think they know this, and that's part of how they try to structure the algorithm, but they can't count on how much staying power Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad video essays have. I mean, people just love Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul video essays. It is like there's like a genetic... I think in like 50 years, scientists are going to discover a gene that is single-handedly devoted to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul video essays, and that's just going to be something we normalize. But yeah, so because whatever, I don't really know. I mean, I should probably look more at the one script I have that is like super far along about an AI art company, because that's the one that I could see happening. So if I really put more work into it, but things move slow, you know what I mean? And something like that, I'm almost like I'm reporting on an ongoing thing. So when I choose to stop it is kind of somewhat arbitrary, unless something big happens, like the company goes out of business or it gets sold, in which case, even then, it's like, well, you'd probably want to wait. Things just move so slowly. So anyways, I move slowly. I enjoyed doing the recent live streams. They weren't that recent. I've already talked about them on the podcast, but the 50,000 subscriber and then the debate. Is there another debate coming up? Cause I'll live stream that. Hold on. Presidential debate. Trump posts about a new debate plan and Harris pushes back. Harris is Kamala Harris. As I mentioned, I sort of broke the news last week that Joe Biden is handing off the baton to his confidant and viceroy, Dr. Kamala Harris. I've given her an honorary doctorate from the School of Verbal Journals, and it's a doctorate in opportunism. So cool. Great. All right. So good stuff. What else do we have? Oh yeah. Also, just some sort of follow-ups, some sort of closing the loops, you could say. I'm supposed to be closing loops here. Speaking of coffee, I never followed up. I mentioned on the pod last week, which, by the way, video episode, what'd you think? That was pretty cool. Video episode. It only has like 11 views because it's just for supporters of the channel, What's Therapy, and obviously VJP heads. So it's, that's pretty special. We had to have just a video. You can only watch that by being a channel supporter. Isn't that amazing to think about? Just like the amount of privilege I've, opened the doors to here. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed that. Next week will be a public episode. Not sure if I'll do video because that's just between you and me. You know what I mean? The video stuff. But I guess I could do it for the public too. We'll see kind of how I'm feeling because last public episode was not video, and I think the response was overwhelmingly okay. Okay, so the coffee loop here is, so last week I mentioned on the pod how I messed up really bad with coffee that morning. And it's funny, I actually had a stupid coffee thing last night too. But the one last week was so bad. I was making coffee in the morning before doing the pod, and I just I didn't put the lid on the pot in the coffee. I have like a Mr. Coffee machine, not to sort of be, gender. I don't know if that's not to gender my coffee machine. I'm just saying that the coffee machine company is called Mr. Coffee. So, it works in a way where you put the pot in the thing, and you need to have the lid on the pot because it's what triggers the drain above to start draining from the soaking coffee grounds. So without that top, it just made it so the coffee top, sorry, those were two different uses of the word top. And there are a lot of uses of the word top, I've learned. But yeah, the lid affected the upper compartment to not drain. And so the upper compartment just like swelled up with coffee, and it's just hot water and grounds were just all throughout the machine, and nothing went into the pot. So the pot is just on this heat pad and getting like way overheated. First thing I noticed was I walked into my kitchen, I smelled from across the kitchen. I have a very large, spacious kitchen, granite floors, chandeliers. And so from way across the kitchen, I smelled some sort of strange, one might say burning smell. So I was like, that's not how coffee normally smells, was sort of my thought. And then, 10 seconds later, I figured out what was going on. So it was embarrassing. And it was bad. And I say my kitchen because I live at work. I live here at the office. So that's the cool thing about the podcast. They part of working on the podcast is you live on the premises. They have this like palatial dormitory. And we all stay here. Me, Donna, the producer, Reginald, the data guy. He's on a separate floor. He gets I think it's a lower floor, like hierarchically, but it is actually a higher floor in the building. So I don't know. I don't really know how that's supposed to work. So that was my mistake with coffee. It'd be funny if I didn't close the loop on that would have been a funny bit, but now that I am talking about it, I can't do it. It'd be funny if I then didn't close the loop on talking about, the incident from last night that I referred to occurring in a coffee related way. And I just like always had some loop not closed. That would be interesting. We could sort of practice distress tolerance. That's a very important skill. If you don't know what distress tolerance is, it's when you tolerate distress. And, common way I think about that is things not resolving. The feeling of something not being completed or finished is a common sort of distress, minor distress that you can, encounter. Even like, for example, it could just be like someone not texting you back, which never happens to me. People always text me back. Should we do a surprise grinds my gears segment? Because I just thought of something. It grinds my gears when people don't text you back. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the worst, right? I mean, come on. That's just so bad. What's the deal with that? You know what I mean? You have a friend. You're like a good friend with someone. You know what I mean? It's one thing if it's like someone you're just like a total, maybe someone you met once and you're like, oh, like, try to reach out. When it's like a good friend and they just don't respond, and then like you message them about something else like a week later and they don't respond, and you're like, and then they're fine. You're just like, what the heck? Because I obviously have a tendency to take things personally. I'm a sensitive guy. I've talked about that before, but it's like, and it's confusing. And something that can often be the case is like we can take things personally almost for a sense of control. And that's something I've definitely talked about with clients in therapy. It's just, in a way, it's a perverse benefit we can get from taking too much responsibility, is that we can almost feel like, well, then it's within my control. If I can do things differently, different things will happen, rather than, there's a lot of chaos in the universe, and sometimes things don't work out even regardless of my efforts. But it's different. I'm not saying we always think one way or the other, but that is one way that sometimes, the brain can think. But yeah, so in a way, I want it to be like, oh, this friend is mad at me, because that would be like a explanation. But then when you don't have a reason to know why they're mad at you, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not just going to make up something. I mean, you start getting into really like far-fetched territory, and it's just like, okay, maybe they're mad that we had it felt briefly awkward when we hung out for an hour. There was like 1 or 2 moments of brief awkwardness. That must be what it is. So, or like something I don't even, they've changed their mind about me as a person. They've figured out that I'm actually kind of not great. You know what I mean? They've seen through the facade of trying to be a fairly decent person and be good and have a good influence on the world. And they've seen that I'm just an animal. I'm a creature, and I put on clothes, but it's only to pretend that I'm civilized, and I'm not civilized. What if we had like it wouldn't be that crazy if we had like a ingrained fear that we'd be seen as animals. That's actually sort of something that Ernest Becker talks about in the book Denial of Death that I mentioned in like my Better Call Saul video on Jimmy the Artist, like part 6 or whatever. But he talks about it in the positive way, that it's actually in a way we desire to be just, no, never mind. Well, he talks about it both ways. He talks about the ways we desire to be just a creature and get to sort of shed our symbolic, spiritual, higher order human selves, which come with responsibility and awareness of death. But also, the whole book is about the denial of death and the way that we recede or retreat into our higher order, non-animal, I'm not a creature selves through everything, basically, that we do. Art, work, everything. Not everything, but a lot of things. So yeah, that's I'm talking about that because yeah, that would be interesting if we all had like a sort of ingrained fear of being seen as an animal, and like I guess it would just kind of make sense. And I'm talking about that because, oh yeah, it was just part of my sort of long-winded um, demonstration of rumination. I found a really cool academic article recently about it's called constructive versus unconstructive repetitive thinking. And it's extremely interesting. I would definitely recommend looking it up. And that's the Grinds My Gears segment. One thing from the last episode that I wanted to mention briefly is I had a mistake, and at 31 minutes and 23 seconds, I said Elaine Krasner instead of Elaine de Kooning when I was talking about the abstract expressionist painters, and I was reading the reviews of the biography I just finished on goodreads.com. Elaine Krasner is not a person. Elaine de Kooning is a person, and Lee Krasner is also a person. They both were people. I believe they've passed away. They lived long and fruitful lives and changed art history and the world in immeasurable ways. Talk about denying death. Whew. They did die, but they denied it too by living such fruitful lives, which is all you can do at the end of the day. You know what I mean? You don't. I actually just watched a really good YouTube video in the last week about. I could look it up. That would be a good thing to do. It's about the guy who's trying to live forever. It's going to be hard to find in my history. I watched so many videos. What's the name of the guy? Guy trying to live forever. Wow, this is going to take a while to find. Okay, actually, that only took a second. Hold on. His name, Brian Johnson. Okay, so Brian Johnson. And then just search that on YouTube. It was a huge video, so no, it's just bringing me his videos. That's bad. Okay, maybe search in my history. So this is really good content. Search in my history, Brian Johnson. Nope, that I didn't search in my history. That's a lot of boxes and places. Don't die. Okay, so here it is. The video is called How to Never Die, and the channel is Ordinary Things with 1 million subscribers. I'd never seen him before, but he was very good. I don't know all his videos. He covers a lot of controversial topics. I don't know if I agree with him necessarily on everything. I might. But he really handled this video quite well. He handled the complex subject and actually gave it the nuance it deserves instead of just like making fun of the guy, even though he did a really good job of making fun of this subject. Personally, sometimes I'll watch videos that are super dry on YouTube, but in general, I want stuff that's very funny and sort of edgy, not in like an offensive way, but just with an edge to it, a sharpness, and just like a humor. So he really nailed the humor. But also, anyways, so just that's not how you want to deny death. Like this guy Brian Johnson, like spending so much of his attention and so much money and time just studying his body to optimize his lifespan. I shouldn't say it's something you shouldn't do. What I should say is it's just such a literal manifestation of it's just such a literal thing of the literal manifestation of the denial of death. It's just like, wow, oh my gosh, it's so literal. He's just actually obsessed with not dying. So it's like, did no one tell him you're supposed to be symbolic about it? It's supposed to be like a symbol thing. Okay. So huge announcement. I teased this on the last episode, but it is time now for the Verbal Journal podcast to make our official presidential endorsement of the 2024 United States presidential election. That's right. We're going to make this is a recommendation. It's not mandatory. You can still do whatever you want. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to write into verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.com, which, by the way, last week I didn't say the email address, I don't believe. I was just like, write in. You know what I mean? It's Not great. So you don't have to tell me. You can just do whatever you want, and I won't know. None of us will find out. Even Reginald won't find out. He's going to be running the numbers, but he won't know who you voted for. So, but it is time for the presidential endorsement. So we had a lot of discussion in the last week. All kinds of, there were union meetings. We have a thriving union here at VJP Productions. We had meetings where the union wasn't included. You know what I mean? There were all different types of meetings. And, eventually we came to the following conclusion. And I'm going to read this as a statement. All right. So let me pull this up. The Verbal Journal podcast endorses Kamala Harris for president. Okay. Yeah, that felt kind of anticlimactic, I guess. I was thinking it would be okay. Yeah, it's just the Democratic candidate. Now, how did we come to that conclusion exactly? Because I didn't get to be in any of those meetings. I was having to, I'm memorizing the script. Even though it's written out, they want me to memorize it before the day of. So I'm having to memorize the script all week, even though it's changing also constantly. So it's a little bit tough here. I've said before it's Kafka-esque to be memorizing a script that's constantly changing when I will ultimately be reading it. But, they say that there's nothing better for me to do. I say, I could have been in these meetings. I could have been, I'm a fan of Cornel West, personally. I thought he's a pretty good candidate. Okay, maybe he's not going to win or, he doesn't have a chance of winning, but it's not like it matters. It's not like if you endorse the right person and then they win, you get a bunch of money. You know what I mean? It's not like you win something. Unless we're invested in Kamala Harris's campaign. We're invested in Kamala Harris's campaign heavily? Really? Okay. So apparently we're heavily invested in Kamala Harris's campaign financially in a way that will actually pay off here at the podcast if she does win. She has a much broader sort of plan in terms of how to manage podcasting in the 2024-2025 season. So when you look at Donald Trump's podcasting sort of plans, there's a very shriveled kind of feeling to it. Like it's not expansive. He doesn't really have, he's not a visionary when it comes to podcasting. Neither is Kamala Harris, but I trust the people in her orbit to look at the issues that matter to me and my family and to make the right decisions in terms of podcasting. So thank you, Kamala Harris, for accepting our endorsement, because she did not come out and disavow, which we were all a little worried about. So that is good, and we're golden. Okay. And Reginald is sitting a little bit closer to me this week. You're never going to hear him on the mic. I won't allow that, but just know that, as I said last week, because he apologized and so he is sitting a little bit closer to me. I'll just let you know about that. It's not relevant to anything, but I just figured it'd be good to mention. So fun little update. There's no main section today, by the way, but that's fine. It doesn't make the episode better if there's a main section. But just a little chess fun. Even though I deleted the chess desk, we can still talk about chess. It just doesn't have its own desk. Ding Liren beat Hans Niemann. I like Ding Liren because he's the current world champion. I like his personality, and people give him a hard time because he just didn't play a lot. He missed a few tournaments, and he has sometimes takes time off for his mental health, and so people are like, no, do what we want you to do. So I like that he beat Hans Niemann, because Hans Niemann famously has a really bad attitude and just frankly is unpleasant, seemingly. So who won this tournament? It actually ended yesterday. Hans Niemann might have even won it. Let's see. Hold on. I was really hoping Vladislav Artemiev would win because he's my favorite. He did well. He was in the top. I'm trying to find. Anyways, yeah, that's cool to me that Ding won. Oh, nice. There's a good game Artemiev won in the second to last round. I'd love to check that out later. Let me check it out now, actually. You can get my live reaction. So this is my favorite Russian, or my favorite player. He's this Russian guy. He just has a really creative style. Okay, so he's playing black in this game. Sort of lets a trade happen. Oh, interesting defense. It could get kind of wobbly for him. He closes it up a little bit. Yeah, that's an interesting way that these top players can play. Like, create a seemingly vulnerable defense by moving their pieces a bunch, but then make it a stable defense, and then suddenly they have their pieces in an interesting spot. And oh my god, I can't even explain how interesting this game is. Like, Artemiev sacrifices a pawn, gets his knight in an interesting position, forking the opponent's rooks. That pawn advances and attacks his own queen, so then he takes one of those rooks with his knight, now attacking the opponent's queen, giving up his queen potentially, but the opponent says, no, I'll take that knight. And then he moves his queen away. Just like doing these interesting delaying tactics. And then anyways, he won the game because his opponent blundered ultimately. But good job Ding beating Hans. Good job Artemiev. Oh, wait, I didn't even look at who won. Hold on. Who won the tournament? So this is the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz. So this is the World Rapid and Blitz. Oh, it's a team championship? Whoa, I didn't realize it was team. Just tell me who won. Just tell me who won. Oh, yeah, it is teams. Oh, I don't know, man. Whatever. No one cares. You don't care who's watching this. You don't care. No one cares. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So, no word of the day. Protest desk. So let's start the desk sections. We got the protest desk first. We've had the protest desk. I don't know if it's been called that, but it has. We've talked about protesting. Here we go. Image shows defaced Freedom Bell in DC, not Liberty Bell. So people were saying that the Liberty Bell was defaced, and I could not sleep at night. As a warm-blooded American, I was like, that's the bell from history when they carried it, I'm sorry, hold on. But apparently it was actually, luckily, the Freedom Bell in DC, not the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. So good job, protesters, on not doing the other bell. Next up, Workers' Rights Desk. This is from ESPN. It says, Chiefs, which, by the way, how have they not changed that team name yet? Doesn't that, if baseball changed if football changed the Washington team, right? That's not even a different league. That's football changing the Washington team to, hold on. Wait, what is their name? Football team. Washington football team. Commanders. It's okay. It's not as memorable. It doesn't matter. So Washington Commanders. Then you have the baseball. Well, the Atlanta team in baseball really needs to change its name, frankly. But the Guardians in baseball. Guardians baseball. The Cleveland Guardians, so they changed that. But the Kansas City football team doesn't want to change their name to Chiefs. What, do they think it's respectful? Okay. Anyways, ESPN article, Workers' Rights Desk. Chiefs Patrick Mahomes says he's not underpaid after QB deals. So this article says, Patrick Mahomes says he doesn't feel a sense of urgency for the Kansas City Chiefs to, quote, show me the money after a slew of new quarterback mega deals on the NFL landscape. Another player said that movie line after signing his new 4-year deal for $212.4 million with the Miami Dolphins. And then hours later, Jordan Love inked a 4-year, $220 million deal with the Green Bay Packers. Mahomes, A 3-time Super Bowl MVP signed a 10-year, $450 million deal in 2020. That deal was restructured last season with Mahomes, 28, set to earn $210 million through 2026, an average of $52.6 million per season. So an average of 52.6 instead of an average of also about 50 or 60. So I don't get how that's lower than the other two guys. But awesome for Mahomes that he's not, worried about his financial situation. I think that's there. I don't, he is a worker at the end of the day. He does not own the means of production. He has to sell his labor power for a wage. It's like, it's an unusual situation, but it's not completely unusual. Like, a lot of people do that. They technically work for a wage or a salary. But it's not like they have any sort of control over the decision making of the labor apparatus around them. Like, I'm really not even joking at all. Like, Patrick Mahomes is 100% an employee and is actually subject to workers' rights issues all across the board. And obviously the NFL union is an extremely important part of the NFL and probably doesn't have enough power. It's funny. This salary thing is not really a workers' rights issue, but consumer rights, sort of the other side of the coin, if you think about it. Consumer rights desk. Let's talk about consumer rights. CBS News reports, this is a big headline, you might have seen this, StubHub tricks consumers into overpaying for tickets, prosecutors allege. So this is prosecutors alleging in the past week, online events platform StubHub is using predatory sales tactics to illegally mislead consumers into shelling out more for tickets. As I said, this is prosecutors alleging this. Washington, D.C. Attorney General Brian L. Schwab claimed in a complaint that StubHub is tricking consumers by hiding mandatory fees until just before shoppers make a purchase. Oh, that's cold. Hiding mandatory fees. These fees can boost the total cost of a ticket by 40%, the lawsuit alleges. Drip pricing. Wow. That's deceitful. Good. I do think if there's any reason for the government, it's to rein in corporations from doing deceitful stuff. I think the U.S. has pretty lax laws when it comes to stuff like this, and it'd be good to have less lax laws, I would say. Maybe that's an organization we can start. Lesslaxlaws.lom. Okay, so next up we got the art desk. And on the art desk, first we have from Art News, Picasso estate forgives Mona curator for phony paintings in the ladies' lounge. So Mona, the Museum of Old and New Art in Tasmania, Australia, was spared the lash after, I'm reading the article, I didn't make that up. After it was revealed that several, quote, Picassos displayed in the institution's exhibition Ladies' Lounge were not by the Spanish master, but were rather fakes that the curator and conceptual artist Kirsha Cashelli and her manicurist's niece made. Wow. It was only accessible by the Ladies' Lounge exhibition, which was intended to be accessible only by those who identify as women. Why do they say it that way? Why don't they just say only accessible by women? That's the identify thing is, you don't always have to use the word identify. You know what I mean? Like, it's assumed that when we're talking about people, we're talking about how they identify. That's just assumed. So I don't know why people have to phrase it this way. It's kind of clunky and stupid. The Ladies' Lounge exhibition, which was intended to be accessible only by women, garnered a fair share of media attention after, like, they're trying to say trans people were, it was trans inclusionary. They're trying to say we trans people were allowed to, but it's like, why do you even have to say that? Yeah, I would hope so at your museum that trans people were allowed to be there. Like, yeah, I don't know why you have to brag about that, but, and then make a clunky sentence out of it. Anyways, maybe I'm misunderstanding. The exhibition got a lot of attention because a man was denied entry and sued the museum. What a loser. And then, oh my God. And the courts agreed and ordered the museum to make the ladies' lounge exhibition. So I thought it was in a bathroom at first. No, it's just an exhibition only women were allowed to go in. But the courts said it had to be open to everyone. Cashelli, the curator, is married to the museum's owner, David Walsh. That's fun. Skirted that decision by moving. You know, that's just how it is in the art world. Everyone is having sex with or married to each other. That's just how it is. Who's married to the Mona's owner, David Walsh, skirted that decision by moving the exhibition into the one place. Oh, then they moved it into the women's restroom, including the faux Picasso paintings. Okay, that's interesting. I think they show one of the paintings here, and it does indeed look like a fake Picasso. So, whatever, I guess. Wow, that's an elaborate story. I didn't realize what I was seeing there. Like that story explored the intersection of feminism and forgery. So it was mostly about feminism, though. So that was interesting, more interesting than I thought. Another art news article, Barnes Foundation, which I went to. I was at the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. Speaking of the Liberty Bell, Barnes Foundation cuts 12 positions, fires curator in newly created role. This is from last week as well. So Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia has cut 12 positions from its full-time staff so it's just this like mansion where it's really an amazing art collection. Just so many amazing artists. Apparently more Renoir paintings in France or something. That's what someone there told me. They have and they have De Chirico. They have just like, I think, Courbet and Corot, and just interesting like post-impressionist and modernist, some surrealist works. It's really amazing stuff. So anyways, they're firing a bunch of people. They've confirmed this. Between January and February, the museum, home to a significant collection and blah, 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 parted ways with 3 full-time employees, including 2 senior-level staff members. In April, the museum conducted a round of layoffs, eliminating 9 positions. They terminated the director of finance since 2021, another staffer, a research associate. So in a December 2022 press release announcing Smith and Chong's hirings, these are people they hired 2 years ago, the museum suggested their appointments would be part of a long-term plan for the foundation to, quote, shape its exhibitions and publications in a progressive direction envisioned by its founder, who collected African art in addition to European painting and sculpture. Smith's role of assistant curator for art of the African diaspora was a newly created role meant to focus in part on Black artists. Oh, shit. Wow. Again, so I didn't realize this was going to be about racism. That's so interesting. That we previously read an article I thought was about forgery, but it was also about, and when I say feminism, I'm just using shorthand. It's about social rights related to gender and accessibility, and it's exploring themes related to the historical misogyny of the art field through its there's a lot you could say about it. I was just summing it up by saying feminism. And then this, which I thought was just about neoliberalism, or like corporations just wanting to maybe cut costs and lower the standard that they're providing of things, is actually about racism and the historical white supremacy of the art world. Wow. Because apparently this was a role they had for a year and a half, assistant curator for art of the African diaspora. You don't create that freaking position at the Barnes Foundation and then eliminate it a year and a half later. The role was meant to focus in part on Black artists, so not all about Black artists, but in part. At the Barnes, he worked on several exhibitions featuring living and dead Black artists, including Lebohang Kyangye, I don't know these artists, William Edmondson, I've heard of, Isaac Julian. At the time he was terminated, Smith was the Barnes managing curator for the traveling exhibition. that they have going on the show schedule. Okay, so in an interview, he said his firing came after he requested a contract from the Barnes and London's Hayward Museum to publish his research for the Thomas exhibition, a request that the Barnes denied. They denied his request to publish his research? He said he was increasingly mistrustful of the internal handling of his research and felt a contract was necessary to protect his academic credentials. Whoa. After returning from a Barnes-sponsored residency in Lagos in December, he refused to produce the essay without a written agreement. Smith said he was then warned by Barnes leadership that he would be out of compliance with his role if he failed to file the essay for the exhibition's book. He probably just wanted rights and control, maybe final edit on the essay and ownership in some way. The Barnes denied in an email that Smith's termination had anything to do with the contract request. But Smith told Art News that he felt upon his hiring that Barnes' leadership was unprepared for his arrival and unable to respond substantively to his inquiries about the role's critical focus, his attempts to define the scope of its diasporic concentration, or to provide information about the reason it was created. The position was created in 2020, 2 years before Smith assumed it. Wow, so they should have had that figured out. It was clear almost from the moment I entered the door that they did not want this position. They had no intentions to fulfill the promises of the position, he said. They sent me to Nigeria to show face. Wow, that is scathing. Okay, well, that is interesting. The museum declined to comment on the reason for the layoffs or whether the cuts could affect future programming. Of course, no, they'll have no effect on future programming. Wow, so very interesting art desk. And biography desk, I finished the book it was a memoir more than a biography by Catherine Koo, famous gallerist and museum curator in Chicago and in New York and throughout the world, but largely in Chicago based. And just she wrote amazingly, extremely well written, sort of, writing about all her experiences with famous artists one-on-one directly. Franz Klein, Edward Hopper. She knew Mark Rothko incredibly closely. Clifford Still she was friends with. Like, no one's friends with Clifford Still, and she was friends with him. Anyways, very interesting. Now I'm reading a book about British artists of the 20th century. So that's cool. And climate change desk. Okay, that's a bit of a change of vibe, but it's good to talk about. This is a Guardian article. Humanity's survival is still within our grasp, but only if we take these radical steps. This is from May. It's written by David King, chair of the Global Climate Crisis Advisory Group. And in 2008, the late American climate scientist Wally Broker warned of the global repercussions of polar ice loss. Today's predictions echo louder than ever as Greenland ice hemorrhages at an alarming rate, threatening rapid sea level rise. Over the past 15 years, the Arctic Circle region has been heating up at 4 times the global average. It's now more than 3 Celsius above the levels in the 1980s. In 2023, we witnessed a staggering loss of Antarctic sea ice. Over the past year, land and ocean temperatures have soared far beyond what was anticipated for an El Nino year. Global average temperatures have breached the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark, and that's above the average from before Industrial Revolution. Right? Yeah. From 1850 to 1900, I think, indicating that climate transition has been unleashed. From record-breaking wildfires across continents to catastrophic floods threatening to submerge major cities, extreme climate events have become the new norm, causing massive... Can I be honest? Reading this is difficult, and it's I really actually find it hard, especially I'm at the end of the podcast, and I actually want to be done. And it's so difficult to actually face this stuff head on. And there's nothing you can say about it that's funny. And it's just so bad. But it feels so necessary and right to focus on. And this article, as you could tell by the headline, is not about doom and gloom explicitly. That's just a beginning. Meaningful action falters. We're entrenched in our dependency. stranglehold of fossil fuel giants. On our current path, civilization as we know it will disappear. If we meet current commitments only by net zero by 2050, perhaps some form of humanity will survive managing the challenges of continued extreme weather events, ice loss, and sea level and temperature rises. But we have agency to change this, and a thriving future is still on the table. To grasp it, we must embark on a radical journey encompassing an essential 4R planet pathway. So 4 letter R planet pathway. You can look that up. This means reducing emissions, removing the excess greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere, repairing ecosystems, and strengthening local and global resilience against inevitable climate impacts. This really is possible, y'all. Recent analysis shows that annual global GDP costs due to extreme weather events could rise towards 100% of global GDP around the end of the century. Meanwhile, the transition away from fossil fuels is already underway, with renewables, hydropower, geothermal energy, distributed energy storage, electric transport, and nuclear energy already operating at competitive economic levels. For instance, Kenya has already achieved more than 90% electricity production from renewable sources, an enormous advantage to its economy. The rate of global transition properly led by government regulations and the removal of subsidies for fossil fuel recovery could and should be increased tenfold. Implementing the 4 Rs must be seen as a proper risk management cost, offsetting the very large financial loss figures projected. Today, the world is emitting over 50 billion tons of greenhouse gases annually into the atmosphere. 50 billion tons of greenhouse gases annually into the atmosphere, expressed as CO2 equivalent. Since we are unlikely to achieve a removal rate exceeding 10 billion tons per annum, there can be no way forward without reducing emissions to a very small figure. Today, the greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere exceed 500 parts per million, compared with the pre-industrial levels of 275 parts per million. A safe level for humanity is about 350 parts per million, so we must remove excess greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere. At about 10 to 20 billion tons per annum, I estimate it would take at about 10 to 20 billion tons per annum, I estimate it would take to the end of this century. We must start this process immediately. Additionally, we will need to repair ecosystems to buy time, or else we will be overwhelmed by the consequences of melting polar ice and ice from mountain peaks before greenhouse gas levels are reduced sufficiently. Repairing the Arctic Circle will be a major enterprise. Promising processes are under development but are hampered by inadequate funding. 2 immediate projects worth supporting are covering the Arctic Sea with bright white cloud cover during the 3 months of the North Pole summer, and pumping seawater on top of the thin layer of ice formed over the sea in the polar winter to thicken it. Wow, I didn't know people were doing either of those. These will cost billions of dollars annually, a small fraction of the cost of lives and damage avoided. Deployment of such projects will require global governance and collaboration rarely seen, but if not now, then when? If not for this cause, then for what? So true. And I was talking recently about, executing justice when people commit genocide on a global scale. Obviously, you can only commit genocide really on a global scale. Well, that's not true, but it often, you need international law. And, on a more positive note, you also need international law to do collaboration like this to tackle projects that will make the planet livable for our children and our children's children. I don't even plan to have kids, and I'm like, I don't know how y'all are, thinking about having, like, it's just so crazy. Like, if you have kids and you don't support, like, these measures to make the world livable, you are going to be living with cognitive dissonance all the time in the back of your mind. So, okay, funding will fall on advanced and emerging economies. Heads of G20 countries must lead the way, of course. So that's the end of the article. We are part of the natural world and depend on it. It says we can choose to transition our societies into a sustainable period of ecological civilization. Over the coming decades, as we are faced with a self-inflicted set of global challenges, the need for such a cultural transformation will drive action. This process must begin now. Let's fucking go, though. Let's fucking go. Okay, screen time desk. My screen time report, amazing. I used my phone 58 minutes per day less this past week than the week before because I apparently watched videos on my laptop. I played some chess on my phone, and I sent text messages and had a grand old time. So amazing. I am cured of technology, and I no longer have any urges to use technology. So patron shout out. Thank you to all the channel supporters. I will say your name next time. And I'm so happy that you're listening this much. You know, that reflects very positively on you as a person, frankly. No one wrote in, but you can write into verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.gov. I'm sorry, .com. Imagine if we were a government. Okay, so thanks and goodbye.
This is a podcast or something.